Thank you guys for joining in. Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Avinash Bansal. I am co-founder of TomoClub. We focus on developing skills that we believe matter in the age of AI, which are leadership skills, emotional intelligence, and innovation through a game-based learning curriculum. And we have been working with several schools under SEL programs, leadership programs, career readiness, job readiness. And we are thrilled to have you all here today. As we have all wrapped up a school year, I wanted to take a moment to congratulate all of you as school leaders and educators who have worked tirelessly, I'm sure, to provide their students. And you being here is a testimonial in a way, that education matters to you guys so much that, even in your vacations, you are eager to learn more. And yeah, it's my pleasure to introduce Heather. Heather Marshall is an experienced educational leader with a strong background in K-12 and a passion for equitable education opportunities. She has a Master's of Education in Educational Leadership and Administration and has completed executive programs at Harvard Business School, Harvard Universities. The list goes on. And Heather has an extensive experience as a senior director of Pacific Charter Institute, and she has been a superintendent as well in charter schools and held various hats from strategic partnerships to staff development to educational programs. Like we are honored to have her today and share her insights. So let me set the stone. The job market is right now in a constant state of flux. Like honestly, till last month, people were saying that prompt engineering might be the next big thing, might be the future of employment. But just few weeks back, we could hear even prompt engineering is being done by AI, right? Then if you look at various advancements, right? I don't know if you guys saw that demo of ChatGPT 4.0, where an AI was tutoring a student in step-by-step guide to solve a math problem. That puts tutoring field in a kind of jeopardy. You don't know how it's gonna be like. And similarly, whether it's graphic designing, movie production, software development, content writing, data analytics, you name it, and you'll find some new AI product coming in and trying to, be disruptive in that industry. So it boils down to the main question that what skills are going to be relevant for our students. And that is the topic of discussion today: education skills and AI, and what school leaders should do about it, right? So again, welcome, Heather.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I feel like maybe you should come in and write my next resume or letter of intent because you had some very nice things to say. So thank you.
You have a long list of credentials, so I was
Well,
a little.
I'm old, Avinash. That's how it happens. You get old, your list gets longer. So
Oh, come on. I was a little scared, that I should not miss out something or, but
not quite.
yeah, but thank you for joining us. And and as we navigate this rapidly changing landscape of AI and education, uh, what are your thoughts about it? Like on a macro level, when you hear all these things happening, you as a school leader, what emotions or what thoughts strike your mind?
It's interesting. So all the conferences that I've been to lately, AI is a huge topic, right? And
Yeah.
you get into the conference rooms and they ask for opinions and what people might think of AI. And it's a very diverse crowd. There are some people who are both feet in, let's go. There are other people who, for sure think that AI is going to ruin the country, ruin our children, ruin everything and we shouldn't move forward. And so I think with education, the one thing that I found is you always have to go middle of the road, right? Back in the day when there was a certain way to teach students to read, whether it was phonics or whole language. I think if you've been in the field of education for long enough, you just know that there's never a golden ticket to anything in education. There's always something in the middle of the road. There's always something that works best for one student and doesn't work best for another student. And I think that's very true for AI, is that we've got to figure out what components of AI, A, do our students have access to? B, do all students have access to? Because not every student has the accessibility to everything. And with that access, what are they able to do and what do we want them to be able to do with it? And so, it's here. How do we harness it to make sure that our students aren't going to lag behind, but they're also going to use it in a genuine way to help advance their education, advance them as individuals, but not take away from who they are as individuals, right? I think that's the big concern globally is we're not here to create a bunch of robots. We're here to create individual students.
Me, I agree with you. I think you did, you went straight to the meat of the entire topic, that there is a lot of positives and of course critical factors that we have to keep in mind. And it's all about taking the middle road. So you have kind of answered literally everything in the first go itself. But let me deep dive into the benefits of AI. Okay, as an organization, as a employer side of things, I can say that in the last 1 or 2 years, the speed at which my team is working is phenomenal. We have literally revised our timelines, whether it is from the marketing side, the amount of content we could generate, the coding side, the so what has happened is I don't know, we might have not hired that many people that we would have hired, you know,
Yep.
easily, but everyone has become very efficient. So expectations have definitely gone leaps and bounds. People are becoming much more productive, and I could see it firsthand, and not only in one field, but in all the sectors, right? So similarly, I think all my other peers who are running different businesses, they have a similar take on it. But if you talk about your staff management or your overall, because when you're running a school, it's also running an organization. So
Right.
before we go to the student level, we have to think at an organization level. So what are the education AI benefits that you guys have, explored, or have you explored?
Yeah, so we've just started to explore them more at the district level, office level. One thing that I found easy, we were looking for, if you're out in California, you know that we have a new proposition where we all have to hire art teachers and just put in K-12 art programs into all of our schools. That's tricky, A, because there just isn't enough teachers, but B, it just takes a lot of time and energy in the HR department to write the job description, to do the job duties. Well, I was able to put it into AI to use the California art teaching standards and to create a K-12 job description, and it popped that out for me instantly. Now, of course, I think the big piece about AI is you're going to get that list, but you always have to go back in and sort of rework it, resurface it to make sure that it's something that's appropriate for your context. But it saved hours of time that the HR department would have otherwise spent. Um, I did it. I found it really helpful this end of season when I was doing some staff reviews to put in all the qualifications that I saw in a staff member this year. And it helped me to write goals and helped me to just put succinctly into words what I really wanted to say. Now, with that, I didn't ask it to write me a review for a coworker, right? But what I did is I put in very specific things about that coworker, and I asked it to respond to the different California state standards of the teaching practice. And so that was really helpful. Also, too, if I'm writing an email that I know might be a little dicey or controversial or something, right? I'll write the email and I'll toss it into AI and I'll just say, make more professional. And then, always go back and I'll edit it. But it does help, I find, to put those words into greater order. But then we start to look at that from the student perspective, right? I certainly don't want our students writing essays using AI. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just unacceptable, right? And I would love for students to use some of those AI features to get themselves started. Sometimes you just have a brain freeze and it's hard to get started on an essay. So I think sort of attacking the elephant in the room and teaching kids how to use it as opposed to using it as a crutch or something that they use and then try to put off as their own work, right? But more just using it as a tool. I kind of jumped into the students there, but I think from a business perspective, it's helpful. It does help people align what they're doing, and specifically if you need to go in and align to certain state standards, certain HR practices, maybe you want to reference your handbook. It's easy and it's functional to that in a quick manner. Sorry, I'll let you go into the student part out. That was the HR part.
I love that. That's the whole point, right? As much you want an educator to talk about their field, they'll end up talking about students anyways.
Always.
You can't stop that. But I'll also add one more point. So whenever I'm hiring, for any position, and you basically ask people to write their statement of purpose, or
Right.
why do they think that this job is relevant for them? And for me, as an employer, it has become very easy to identify whether this guy has written just from ChatGPT, or they have at least put some element, some flavor of their own. So,
Right.
so I think when you say that students should not be writing their essays from ChatGPT, some might find it debatable. But me coming from employer side, it just shows lethargy. It just shows me that how much did you care, and how much does it really matter to you. Because even if you're using an AI tool, you can at least ask certain amount of back and forth question, make it more personalized, give it at least thought about it. And I feel majority of applicants, they're not doing that. And it just makes my life easier to, simply reject them. So if your students could hear it from the employer side of things, they would get to know that, how much your individual thoughts matter when you enter the job market, you know. And it's not about how fancy the SOP is looking at. It's about you as a person, which is reflecting. Because at the end of the day, when you're working with this in an organization, when you're working with a company, it's about how you are communicating your thoughts in a team. And your team is as best as the worst player, right? In a way. So I think I agree with you on that. um, and I personally believe the biggest benefit of AI right now is we have been talking for decades about personalized learning, right? Can learning be actually personalized person to person, especially with the skewed up teacher student ratio, with the amount of things teachers have to, do in a day? I think now they might have time to find time for the thing that they love, right? So
Yeah. I
I
agree. One of the interesting things I saw at a conference was a teacher just put in, use the California state standards for grade 5 social studies and write a lesson on, and she put in a topic in that standard. And a great lesson popped up that no doubt she had to make appropriate for her class. But I just kept thinking, how much time did that save that teacher to where now she can go back and start to individualize things for certain students? Right? So if you don't have to spend all of your time creating that lesson, especially if you're in a district that really is looking for very specific lesson plans, that can help take a lot of that time away so that you can actually then get out from behind your desk and start to work with students on a more individualized level. And so what a gift it is to, this, she was even showing us at this specific one, you know, here's the lesson, make a 10-question quiz for that lesson, right? And so again, it takes some individuality where you have to go back in and look at it, but what a great time saver from the student perspective, where that teacher didn't have to spend her hours in the evening or his hours in the evening creating that lesson. They get to go back and maybe look at data that they have on that student, or go back and do a deeper dive on how they can individually support that teacher or that student because they didn't have to do those pieces. So, I think leveraging it, like everything in the world, figuring out how to leverage it to your advantage. I was thinking back, and this maybe is going to show my age, right? But when we were learning multiplication facts and addition, we were told you will never have a computer in your back pocket. Like, you have to learn these facts for this reason. Now, am I still an advocate that you still have to know your math facts? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, we all have a computer in our back pocket, right? I mean, we just do. And some would find you foolish if you weren't using an Excel spreadsheet to track all of your budget items if you were doing it by pencil and paper, right? So figuring out what AI tools we should be leveraging, and then I think as an educator, figuring out what those tools are specifically for your students, training them on how to leverage them to make their work maybe faster, maybe cleaner, better in some way. But then also, to your point, Avinash, is then how do we keep it personalized? I don't know that I told you that I help students write their applications for college entrances,
okay.
and so we're ramping up for next year's seniors, and I talk to them all about it the very first time I work with them. Like, the elephant in the room is, could you in fact use AI to write your college essays to get into college? The answer is absolutely. Could you lie about everything on your resume? Absolutely. But you do have to make some choices in this world about how you're going to live, right? And so like you're saying, colleges want to see an individualized application, just like you as an employer want to see an individualized application. They don't want a computer to print it out. So how do you leverage it to maybe help get some ideas moving? How do you think about it from a college essay perspective, but make sure that it's your own work and doing your own pieces because we don't quite have the technology yet to figure out what has been completely AI generated in the college application world, but we will soon enough.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the lesson really is the colleges want to know about you. Your application is about you. It's not about the computer that you're sitting in front of. And so, how do we train students to do that? Are you regretting asking me now to chat because I just keep talking? I
No,
tend to
no,
be
no,
an open.
absolutely.
So, go
That's the
ahead.
point.
Sorry.
I think, see, the two basic, I would say two sectors. One is the school level and one is the job level. They are
Okay.
the two sectors. If they work together, it can help bridge the gap of knowledge much faster. And that is the whole webinar is all about. So keep on going. There is definitely, I love that.
Yeah, no, it's just fascinating because in this world you could be a complete person where you just, we see it in our government, right? We've seen people who completely lied about their resumes and made it to some of the higher levels in government and it wasn't found out until people started checking into it. I mean, you could and you always could, not be truthful about what you're doing. But the bigger piece is how, from like a college perspective, how maybe a student who has vast leadership skills, how do they put that into an essay that makes sure that they, answer the prompt,
Mm.
but also stick true to their self? And I think that there's a balance there where you can get some support from AI, but make sure that you're actually writing the essay on your own.
So you go
When
to
I
11 points. You get it
when
through
I
the
think,
whole as 8 points. If it lands on the board, that's 1 point.
Uh,
um,
sorry, I didn't get you. Jose, are you saying something?
Jose, were you trying to chime in? Nope. Okay.
Sorry.
Um,
No, you definitely brought up the lie and the truth part, which made me think, what is actually the school policy right now? If you talk from the ethical point of view, from the responsible
yeah,
point of view of teachers and students,
yeah.
what is the school at a organization level has policies around AI? Did you guys build something, or what you guys are thinking about it?
So I don't know about everybody else on this call, but I would say that AI just falls into plagiarism, right? It's always been not okay to plagiarize work, right? Whether back in the day I was pulling encyclopedias off the shelf to get some information, we still couldn't copy that verbatim, right? I mean, that is plagiarism. Pulling things off of the internet and copying them word for word is plagiarism, right? So for us, our policies still they've not adjusted to AI. They have stayed true to plagiarism and students doing their own work. And
Mm.
so I have heard recently that teachers are finding ways to write a prompt and then you can go in and change the font color to clear on a word or two. And then if a student were to copy and paste that prompt and put it into AI, it will pick up on those clear words that the student never saw. And so they'll know the teacher will know that the student used AI because they didn't see those words, but the computer did, which I think is fascinating. I think that eventually everyone will get better at that. But I don't want to spend my time as an administrator hunting down students who are plagiarizing. I
Mm.
want to figure out a way to have meaningful conversation around AI to then change the context, right? I don't think we should be shying away from it. I think we need to teach students how to use it because you just said as an employer, Avinash, if somebody came to you and you asked those two people to write two reports, and one went completely AI and one went completely on their own, I bet you'd prefer the person in the middle because their work got done a little bit faster, right? But it still had some individuality to it. And so we do have to figure out a way to merge those spaces. And I really think that that's in how we work together and work with others. I think that is the middle road. Is it's not going to be the computer. We all have access to that. It's not going to be a calculator. We all have access to that. But how do you take what you've been given? How do I respond to you? How do I respond to others in the room? How do we sort of play in that sandbox, so to speak, to make sure that we can be good colleagues, good students, good family members, right? Like, what are those skills? What are those skills that we're not even talking about today?
I
How do
will,
those soft skills come into play?
we will definitely talk about it, but I get it that your organization, your charter school network that you have, they are definitely thinking about teaching students responsible use of AI, right?
Sure.
But and I get it, plagiarism is never promoted and will never be promoted in that way. And similarly, like recently we heard like OpenAI was sued by New York Times for kind of picking up entire data which their reporters have created, and based on that answering people queries, and eventually now OpenAI is buying that data. So we know that the source code of that information is coming from somewhere. So
Yep.
blatantly copying will never be promoted in a school level. And of course, you're coming up with own hacks of
Right.
identifying, which is very
How to
interesting.
fix it. Yeah.
Um, okay, so I would still say that it's in the build-up process. It's not yet clear of how will this school has a kind of policies around it, but I could see that they're still in the development process, right?
Yeah, I think so, and but like everything, I think we're gonna always be in the development phase. I mean, AI is moving so rapidly that I think a policy that we created last month would probably need to be updated consistently and constantly, right? Because AI just seems to be constantly changing. To your point, the new tutoring system that we learned about through a company where it's not going to give the students the answer, but they can now go in and get support on a math problem, and it takes you step by step to help with that problem. Well, as an educator perspective, that's fabulous because I can hire 100 different tutors, but none of my tutors are available at 11 o'clock at night. And I know from my own 3 kids, that's when they tend to have the most questions about math is at night when
Hmm.
I'm not awake. And, so there are some benefits to it. I really just think we have to figure out how to harness it and then not we can't be afraid of it. If you come out and say, "Students, you can't use it," they're all gonna use it, right? Now teachers will say, "You have to do this in-class essay," right? So we still have to teach students to write, because they're getting prompted to do in-class essays where you can't use AI or you can't use your computer. And I will say personally, on a personal level, spell check has ruined me as a speller. I was presenting at a conference yesterday where I was writing with a marker on a big sheet of paper, and I was questioning every single thing I was spelling because I'm so used to typing and having it auto-corrected, right? So we still have some of those skills that we have to teach and to learn, and we still have to teach students to be good writers,
Yeah,
without the use of AI.
yeah, I agree. I've been there myself, especially in team meetings, and you're on the whiteboard,
Yeah.
and
You're on the spot. Yeah,
and you're kind of just doodling just to show that oh, I want to move fast and don't care,
right.
but
Yeah.
it's an awkward phase. Okay.
Yes.
Um. Okay. Now we definitely understand that AI is a fastly moving industry, and we can't have a static policy ourselves on it. But then, what skills like students should actually have? If I talk from the job market or from skills that should integrate into a curriculum, what skills do you think individually students should develop, which hopefully will be relevant throughout their life?
There's some of the basic fundamental skills, right, that we all need to know, and that's just our basic reading and writing skills. Back when the Common Core was first developed, the big statement then was, we're educating students for jobs that don't currently exist. And I would say that that's true now, even more so, right? True on steroids. But when we first developed the Common Core state standards, they were meant to get students to be critical thinkers. They were meant to get our students beyond just answering questions in a rote manner. They were meant to get our students to start thinking about subjects together. How do we combine the worlds of math and science? How do we combine the worlds of English and social studies? And so those still, in my opinion, all hold true, right? Regardless of AI. AI will take AI can do all of those things, but it doesn't take away who you are as an individual. I have a son. My littlest is a high school junior,
Mhm.
and he's just wrapping up this year. This week, he's at a charter school here in California. That's all basically it's project based learning, kind of, but more importantly, it's groups. So they
Mhm.
constantly are presenting in groups, and I think that that's an incredibly valuable skill for him as he's had to learn how to work well with others and to take ideas and to meld them and to figure out what other people are thinking and doing and how he works that. And I think for you as an employer, I would imagine you're also looking for people that can play well with others, right? You're looking for people who can be part of a team and function. And so those are the skills that I don't think we've developed curriculum for quite yet, right? Or we're just at the cusp of developing that curriculum of teaching those skills on how do you work well with others.
Yeah.
I was sharing with you the story of my middle daughter is an engineering student. She's in her junior year over at UCLA and she's studying mechanical engineering. And I was chatting with an engineer because, I'm a mom, just like all moms do. I want my kid to be employed after she graduates from college. And I said, "What are you looking for? What are you looking for when you're hiring?" And he said, "Well, to be honest with you, I know that your kid can do math She's clearly smart. She's at UCLA. She's studying engineering. What I want to know is, can she work in a team? Can she get along well with others? Can she take things that are thrown at her and figure out how to develop them? And I think that's what we're teaching, right? I would say she's probably not learning that over there. I think she's probably learning all the mechanical engineering skills, but to the teamwork point of it, how do we put that into our students? How do we make sure that when they leave us, they can be, it sounds corny, but how they can be productive members of society? And what are those skills that we need to teach that we can't really find today in a textbook? Because we have to put students in real life situations, and even post COVID, right? The fact that we're all online and it's tricky.
Yeah, I tell you my personal story. So when I entered my engineering college, um, I could never go back and imagine that me doing this, talking to you right now, would have been ever been possible. Because throughout my school days, I was much more, focused on my education, so much so that I gave zero to none importance to my social skills or my presentation skills or even talking to anyone, right? So when I entered my engineering, I was so dumbstruck. I was so feeling alienated because everybody could around me was much better than me, and that was a huge reality check. And then I had to really work hard on myself. I did so many things to get myself out of the shell, and you're absolutely right. I have a very interesting another take. When my journey went from last three organizations that I worked with, I realized that as a leader, you have to take a lot of decisions, right? Whether it is you have to articulate well, you have to listen well, you
Yep.
have to guide people, as well as you have to make a lot of critical decisions on the go. And nobody teaches you that. Everybody
Yep.
says that you will learn these things with experience. And I believe that it's very experience is a disproportion in the world. Some might have a lot, some might not have any, and leaving these important skills on experiences is practically wrong. Because if I was left to learn, let's say, math in a similar fashion, I think I would have not learned elementary math by the age of 30. So so if I was that, okay, you will learn math through life experiences, like that's and that sounds rubbish, right? That sounds foolish to learn that. There has to be some deliberate practice to it. There has to
Sure.
be some simulated environment where I am honing my these skills so that I can use it when it needed, right? And that's what has happened. Whether it is how I'm talking to you, my brain is doing tons of calculation in the back of the mind. It is interpreting what you're saying. It's thinking in the future. It's thinking what might be socially right to say it right here, and it's doing so many calculations which I am not even realizing. But it's not coming to me naturally. I did a tons of practice throughout my career to do this. And but when you said these skills are not practiced, and sometimes you see that people at the age of 45, they're not been also, I would say, emotion intelligent enough to handle the situations. And it's gonna be much more important now in this time when people productivity cannot only suffice them. So if earlier I was a great coder, I was still working in an organization, even if I was being rude or even if I was not a team player. But that's gonna change because your skills are getting commoditized. That is the term I'm believing. The hard skills may get commoditized. Then what will make you, stand out?
Right.
Right? What will make you relevant? So these things keep on popping my head, and I think that is one of the motivations behind Tomo Club as well. I'm not going to insert it here deliberately, but that is one of the motivations of running an organization which is working on social emotional skills. Or there are tons of name, 21st century skills, employ future ready skills and all. um, um, Now I want to talk about the challenges. We have talked about the pros, we have talked about the importance, we have talked about the downsides of it, but we haven't talked about the challenges, you know, which school might face at implementing these tools. And can you tell me some challenges that you guys have faced and how did you guys overcome that?
Well, I think at this point, the biggest challenge for me is not actually understanding it myself, right? So the students are always at this point going to be smarter than we are as far as tech. Well, I'm going to speak for myself as far as technology goes, right? My own personal 3 children are smarter. Let me turn this off. So how do we train and how do we get ahead of something that A is constantly changing and B is something that we potentially don't understand ourselves, right? So how do we teach that? How do we put that as educators? We want to throw it all into a textbook or a workbook or something online, right? This doesn't really feel like we can do that with these skills. And so how do we change who we are as an organization, just educational across the US? How do we change that to make sure that we are keeping up with the times and are consistently changing that? And I think it's to your point is we can't, A, so we have to figure out what skills can we pull out that are going to be uniformly important regardless of the topic, regardless of the state, because I feel like there's always going to be a place for people who just want to sit in an office cubicle and get the job done, right? I mean, I'm hoping there's always a space for that. We can't live in a world where everybody wants to be the public speaker. It's just then there's just too many people talking at once and not enough people listening. And so, where does the balance become? And I'd be curious to hear from you as an employer. Um, in education, even the folks that work at our district level office, they need to have those skills that are representative of working well with others when a client comes in, and a client would be a family or a student. How do we make sure that those people feel welcomed and engaged and part of the process, even if you're just coming to drop off your immunization records? So how do we do that? I think that's the biggest con right now is how do we build for a system that A changes every single day,
Mm.
and we don't probably really understand ourselves yet because it's changing so incredibly rapidly. Like I just don't feel like this isn't US history where we can just go in and build a curriculum because US history already just happened, right? So it's going to change day by day, and yeah, that's the biggest. It's not a worry really because I feel like we're just going to continue to evolve and continue to adjust, but how do we keep up? And with kids who are no doubt smarter than we are, especially when it comes to technology. And, I still text with one thumb. And it embarrasses my 3 children every single time they see me sending a text, right? They're like, "Moms, use both your thumbs at least." But I don't. But I can send a mean text message pretty darn fast. Not mean, but a quick one. So how do we keep up? That's the biggest worry for me is how do we keep up and how do we keep it authentic? How do we make sure, I could run a computer technology class, but I guarantee you by the end of the school year, regardless of the curriculum, it's going to be changed. And how do we do that? So, what meaningful things do we need to pull out of those concepts to
Mm.
make sure that we're teaching our students and let the rest just be taught by life in general?
Yeah, I can give you 2 points, what we
Oh,
have been
I would
doing.
love.
So one thing, I have a group of friends, and we have a common good like a chat like a WhatsApp group that we have. And what we do is what's new in the week of AI, and we basically post our very personal experiences. So rather than posting news, rather than posting any random videos, I would like to know your personal story of how you are using AI. And I think that has been very helpful. And of course, it's hard to kickstart such things because people are again inherently lazy in that way. But I think once they start getting value out of others, they also want to contribute. So that thing has been working. I love the idea which Cynthia has posted here. A living document that keeps on changing with newness, keeping up with the thing. So that has been the one thing that has worked for us. Um, Also, like at TomoClub, when we're running classes, you're right. Students are much more, I would say, like a quick adopters of things. So we basically do that. We basically ask students, what new tools you got to know this week. So I think keeping that curiosity, appreciating that curiosity, right? Some people develop apprehension, right? They like, oh, I'm fed up of this, or I'm getting tired of this. So there is definitely a lot of fatigue which comes in when things are rapidly evolving. But I think when you are able to make those rapid changes more human and you talk to them much more in a compassionate manner rather than in anything else, then people are keeping up. So we are being in the time when we don't know everything. So it's important to keep our inroads more active, whether it's coming from students, whether it's coming from peers. And so if anyone asks me right now, okay, what job do you think will look like in 2040? To be honest, I have no answer to that. And I don't think so if anybody has answer to that. The only thing that we can do is keep on being updated with the time, right? And that's the whole idea. But just want to circle back on the question, the challenges you faced. Of course, keeping up, being adaptive, but has there been teachers coming to you and say that I need to ban ChatGPT because there were some news around it, or I want to ban Gemini or other AI products in your schools? Has there been any challenges on those lines?
So specific, not at our school specifically, but I have definitely heard that. I always sort of chuckle when people want to ban things entirely because it's just not possible, right? I mean, good luck.
Mhm.
Um, and again, because it just changes, right? So what you might ban today has a new name tomorrow, and then we'd have to work on banning that. And that's to my point around policy change is that that would have to be somebody's whole job is to just evaluate policy and to change it every single day. Back in the early days of COVID, we used to laugh because at our site, at our district, we had meetings at 9, noon, and 3. And the information would change between 9 and noon in those early days around. Then we'd have to pivot and do something. Then the information would change. You turn on the news at 3 and it would change, right? And it almost feels a little bit like that, where it's like, okay, well, we just figured that out. Oh, shoot, it changed, right? Now we have 4.0, right? So how do we manage those pieces? So teachers, I think, are still fighting it in our district from a plagiarism point of view. They want students doing authentic work. The ones who I would say are the leaders in their field have started to integrate um, even just the basic chat GPT into their classrooms and showing students how to use it. So making sure that it's a talked about something in the room, that we're not just pretending like it doesn't exist. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about all the cool things that it does. Let's use it for some classroom assignments, but let's make sure that we're still keeping the authenticity of ourselves. And I think that's what we have to teach, right? We have to teach those skills as opposed to shying away from them. I think one example is, well, you know what, there was an example, right, of just sex education in schools. And that's always been a debate about to teach or to not teach, because if we don't tell kids, they won't know all those things, right? And I feel like AI is almost similar to teach or to not teach. We think they won't know.
Hmm.
Well, having raised 3 kids, who my oldest is 25, they know, right? And they're going to know, and they're going to hear about it from other people, regardless of what the topic is. So let's make sure that as educators, we're educating our students on what we know about AI and how to use it effectively and how to implement it. And to the bigger context of what skills outside of AI are important. How well can you work with others? How well can you manage different personalities in a room? How well can you take your thoughts and make them concise and put them into something that would be understandable for others? Those are the key things that we're looking for in in our students. To how do they become, right? We've talked about lifelong learners for a gazillion years, and here we are. How do we do that? How do we promote that when learning could change daily? But I would still argue that every student needs to know the history of the US when they graduate from a US high school. So there are still some static topics, right, that we still need to be teaching. But how do we use AI to maybe make those a little bit more interesting or engaging?
I'm telling you, this is the most novel comparison of AI with sex education. And I'm telling you,
That's the most random
I love
connection.
that. I think that particular thing is definitely gonna blown. But it does make sense. Now I want to bring up another such I would say not so discussed topic is about inclusivity. With
Yeah.
AI coming in, how do you support students in a way that AI is also equitable, right? Uh, when I say equitable, it means they can use it. First of
Yeah.
all, because having laptop and internet connection is not enough. So
Right.
so the two parts to it. First is how the availability and access to AI is also being equitable in your organization. And second is it are you guys using AI in some way to support students with special needs?
So a couple of things to think about with that one. For us, post-COVID, we do find now that every student, because we've given them one, does have a computer and does have internet access. So whether they have internet at their own home or we've given them a hotspot, everybody has access. That access, of course, always looks different, right? There'll always be the student with the Apple computer versus the student with the Chromebook. I mean, that's just, but the accessibility, because the older versions of, like, say, ChatGPT are free, those are accessible. As far as, say, special education, I think about, I have a 23-year-old nephew who has fairly significant autism, and he is a phenomenal kid. I mean, but where he's always needed support is in those interpersonal relationships. And he and I have actually worked through some AI pieces to where he can respond and he can put it into ChatGPT to say, respond as a neurotypical 20-something male in this conversation about sports or with a girl that he wanted to meet and those kinds of things. And it was an interesting eye opener for him. We'd had to go back and say, you know what, you probably actually really wouldn't say it that way, right? But it was an interesting that he could have this conversation to sort of pick up on some of those key words that he wouldn't think that his brain doesn't go to use. His brain's very linear, right? I mean, he can tell you every fact for everything. So when he was a teeny tiny little guy, he could tell me every aisle that every article of clothing that he ever purchased in his drawers was purchased at, and the exact price, and what it cost once tax was added. I mean, he is wickedly smart. He's such a fun kid to be around. But he does struggle when he's trying to make new friends, and so we've practiced a little bit on ChatGPT of just, maybe what would someone say in this instance, and so that's a personal example. But I've also found that for our special education teachers, ChatGPT can be a great place to go in and help write goals for the year. Now, again, you have to be specific about what that student knows and where they're at. But if you want to align a goal in special education to a certain standard with the state standards in California, that's a great starting jumping off point to go ahead and use that. So I would say that that levels the playing field a bit to where you might have an experienced teacher of 20 years who's been writing goals that entire time and a new teacher of 2 years. But ChatGPT, just one piece of AI, can help support both of those teachers in writing goals that might then, so that their students, regardless of which teacher they came to, are getting a similar approach, right? And it's also just a great way to come up with new ideas. So I think those pieces are just jumping off. The tutoring that we were talking about, I think that could be a great piece, not only for students in special education, but for all students, right? Because it meets you at the level that you're at and helps you move forward. We just have to figure out how to use those responsibly and effectively and equitably. How do we, like you said, make sure that every student has that opportunity, and but that they also know how to use it once they have the opportunity. Um, so
So this is something different in my experience while working with students with special needs. So at TomoClub, we do conduct sessions, right? And so all the schools that we work with, initially when we thought we're going to make the product, we're going to make our game-based curriculum and we'll train the school teachers to do it. But then, of course, a lot of school came back to us and asked us to provide a felicitator to conduct the sessions. And
right.
we have been training our own Tomo Club experts in managing kids of different needs. So this is one field where we have found that the human element has been very helpful.
Yeah.
Is in a classroom setup, if the students has the access to the product, so they are playing the game, they are understanding the concepts behind it. But then every student's reaction is very different. If they have some students are being they completely shut down if somebody is too loud, or if they completely don't understand that how well they are communicating their feelings, and they can be very random or can be very abrupt. So we have realized that in those special cases, the Tomo Club teacher that we are providing has been very helpful. And I see
Absolutely.
that particular aspect still be relevant to be done by humans. And whether it's not only the comfort of humans, it's also the relevance of teacher in that space. So coming to that point, I don't think so teachers are going to be anytime irrelevant. Similarly, if I have friends who are pilots and I ask them, they have literally told me that whether it's a takeoff or landing or maneuvering the plane, it can all be done by the computer. And it is done by computer, but this still needs to be there, right?
Yeah.
And they're not just for the psychological comfort of the passengers, it's because of edge cases, it's because of still guiding through. Similarly with doctors, similarly with teachers, I think they're going to be relevant anyways. And especially in student with neurodiverse kids or with anyone, um, actually I would like to take back, not with neurodiverse kids but with everyone. Teachers in the classroom is relevant. And yeah, So that
But
has
to
been,
that, so what training do we need, right? So, years ago, we implemented that every teacher had to have training to support EL or English language learners, right? And so that was something that was implemented across the state. And so now, how long will it take us to turn teachers into more mentors? And what training do we need to be supporting our teachers with to teach those skills? Because it isn't, you learn a lot in the classroom, right? But some things, if they're not just specifically taught and maybe we don't offer a certification in, maybe that's the next piece. And when I think about TomoClub, like, is there a way to support students and also support teachers in working through some of those scenarios, right? Like, because you're going to have this vast across the US, across the world bank of students to watch, right? And every year, maybe we have 28-ish students to watch in a classroom, and that starts to build. But how do you take all of those pieces that you've learned about child behavior
yeah.
and responses to activities and work that into something that we can use then to support teachers with? I think that to all of your questions, if we're going to support students, we have to support teachers. And so, how do we support teachers first and foremost, so that they can then go in and effectively support their students. And then those students will become, the next generation of teachers and employees. And that's a big question. And something that I'm not sure. We're so like jumping on, like, we got to fix this. You either love it or you hate it, or wherever you might stand, but it's here. And so if we don't bring in teachers and teach them how to use it and give them the skills, how can we expect our students to then get the skills also? So that'll be an interesting piece to watch, I think, because we haven't even discussed it. I've not been to a conference yet. We've discussed how to support teachers through the AI movement to then support students.
You know what? You have given me some very interesting idea. So since the school year is just over and all the schools we worked with, we were collating our experiences, we were, consolidating our learnings, and we didn't think about. We have a lot of inputs right now for the school teachers that we have been
Hmm.
working with, and I think we will write that. We will write an email to the school leaders that we work with of our understanding of how teachers can work with their students much better, because we have some solid data on
Yeah.
on the emotional intelligence, on the overall conduct of the students, behavior conduct of the students. See, yeah, I think that can be an
It'd be
interesting
interesting.
value prop. You just
Yeah.
made me think
It'll be
that.
interesting to see. I would love to see what you pull from that. Because I would love to know how to support our teachers better in doing it. I feel like the old lady in the room when kids are doing things on the computer that I don't understand. And but I recognize I probably will never understand it, right? I have no desire really to keep up with kids these days, as we would say. But I do want to know how to relate to them, and I want to know how to work alongside them, and I want to know how to continue to promote what it is that they're doing to then lead to their success. So I would love to hear what your staff has learned in working with students.
I'll definitely share that with you. Any closing remarks? I would love to have. I can see there's a lot of chat happening in parallelly, so definitely would love to know some questions if people want to ask. But before that, do you have any closing remarks to this topic of education skills and AI and what school leaders should know?
Yeah, I'm excited, and I think that as a school leader, everyone just needs to embrace it, but embrace it thoughtfully and embrace it, asking questions, trying to learn ourselves, but also figuring out how we're going to empower our teachers and empower our students. And how do we empower our parents? How do we make sure that the parents who get to spend time in the evenings with all of their students, how do they feel empowered also to then support students through these different pieces? I think it's an exciting time. I know that it's scary, but I know that my grandmother felt equally as concerned with the idea of calculators when she thought for sure I wouldn't be able to figure out how much a pound of apples was at the grocery store. So, I know that fear was that felt too, right? It just is different. So, we need to embrace it. It's here. And we can't really shy away from it by saying we're not going to use it. Okay, you may not, but your students for sure will. So I'm excited. I think these conversations are invaluable. We need to continue to have them. You know, um, I think you and I will both be at the conference, the national conference, out in Boston at the end of the month, and I'm excited to hear about how other schools are embracing AI and figuring out how to best use it with their students. So
I also have a closing remark on it, which I was telling you initially. So AI has solved for now the problem of access in terms of access of information. Of course, whether it was search engines, whether it was encyclopedias, there was access of data. But with AI, the access of data is on steroids to some different level, right? So I think for the school leaders, the problem statement right now in front of them is the engagement piece. How are they able to engage the kids much better in the school curriculum, school instructions, and what different pedagogies they can experiment with,
Yep.
uh, what different assignment structures, which doesn't which doesn't have the problem of plagiarism, right? Can those assignments be, let's say, a form of a video submission? Hopefully, again, there can be deep fake videos on that as well, but but that's what we have to keep on challenging. So when I was initially working on the idea of TomoClub, games really stuck with me because I could think that that's solving the problem of engagement and communication and discussion along the game side makes it even better. So I think a lot of examination and assessment will become real time rather than a test paper driven, rather than assignment driven, because it will be a constant battle. The tools are going to get better, the plagiarism tools are going to get better. So
Yep.
I think the assessment and the teaching methodology has to also focus on engagement per se, to remain to remain relevant in the age of AI. So that's my take on this. So yeah, that's very interesting, and I would love to take some questions from the people. I could see there are a lot of communication. I love so many
Yeah,
ideas.
there's been some great comments. Yeah.
I would definitely go through it. Anybody would like to unmute themselves and asks anything, we'll be happy to take that up.
I would just love to hear also how it's being embraced in other areas.
Okay. If you want to share your experiences, of course, more than welcome. In the meantime, I could just read comments. Teacher to facilitator is the transition. Nice. So yeah, perfect, guys. I guess we were very clear on our discussion. But thank you so much, Heather, for being a part of this
Thank
discussion.
you.
Uh, Everybody, I'll definitely share a recording of this video as well as soon as it's up on YouTube. But thank you so much for making it.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Take care.